let's talk about one of the biggest frontiers in medicine. What if we could use AI to design drugs for diseases that, up until now, we've basically considered untreatable? We're going to dive into how artificial intelligence is completely rewriting the rulebook for creating new medicines, turning what once seemed impossible into the next big breakthrough. So let's just start with this one big question, because it's really the one that drives everything we're about to explore. What if we could finally, actually, create effective drugs for illnesses that have just stumped scientists for decades? This is the fundamental problem that AI is now stepping in to help us solve. Now, to really understand just how big of a deal this is, we first have to get our heads around the main challenge. It's known as the undruggable target problem. And believe me, it has been a massive hurdle in modern medicine for a long, long time. Okay, so what does that actually mean? Well, at the root of so many diseases, think some cancers or neurodegenerative disorders, you'll find these misbehaving proteins. The problem is many of these proteins have surfaces that are just, well, they're smooth or have really shallow grooves. They don't have a nice, deep pocket for traditional drug to lock into. And that's exactly what scientists mean when they call a target undruggable. So how in the world do you hit a target that doesn't want to be hit? Well, the solution starts with a surprisingly old idea that is making a huge comeback: covalent drugs. It's kind of like a vintage strategy that's suddenly getting a high-tech 21st century upgrade. What's so fascinating here is the complete 180 in how scientists view these drugs. I mean, they were first discovered kind of by accident way back in the 40s. But for decades, they were seen as just too risky, too toxic. But then over the last 15 years or so, we've seen what's been called a remarkable renaissance. Scientists finally figured out how to make them incredibly precise. And now we're looking at over 125 of them being approved. So what exactly is a covalent drug? Well, think of it less like a key fitting into a lock and more like a smart molecule that's been specifically designed to form a permanent chemical bond with its target. It doesn't just temporarily block the problem protein, it latches on and is designed to shut it down for good. And this slide just illustrates the key difference perfectly. A traditional, non-covalent drug is kind of like Velcro. It sticks for a while, but it can come off pretty easily. A covalent drug, on the other hand, is like superglue. It forms an irreversible bond. And that permanence, that gluing action, is exactly what allows it to hit those so-called undruggable targets that other drugs just can't get a grip on. All right, so this is where it all starts to feel like science fiction. To find these superglue-like drugs efficiently, researchers are building a totally new kind of system, an AI-driven ecosystem that gives us a whole new blueprint for drug discovery. Now, this might look a little complex at first glance, but the core idea is this really powerful, self-improving loop. It all starts by feeding the system massive amounts of data from existing research. Then, AI models learn from all that data to predict which molecules might work. Those predictions then guide actual lab experiments and, here's the most important part, the results from the lab are fed right back into the system. This makes the AI smarter and more accurate for the next round of discovery. It learns from its successes and its failures. So if you really break it down, this entire ecosystem stands on 4 key pillars. You've got the huge databases of knowledge, the AI and physics models that make the predictions, the automated computer workflows that screen thousands of ideas virtually, and finally that crucial closed-loop feedback from the lab that makes the whole system smarter over time. Okay, this all sounds amazing in theory, right? But does it actually work in the real world? Let's take a look at a fantastic case study that shows this process in action, taking us all the way from computer code to a potential new cure. The challenge was laid out very clearly. Find a brand new covalent drug to shut down a protein called CRM1. Now, this protein, it basically acts like a rogue shuttle bus inside our cells, helping several types of cancer grow and spread by moving other problem-causing proteins around. So stopping it is a big deal. So the team used this really clever 2-step strategy. They called it the noncovalent first funnel. First, they used a super fast but less precise computer simulation to just find molecules that could physically fit into the CRM1 protein. Think of it like quickly checking which keys might fit a lock. Then, and only then, did they take that much smaller group and run more powerful but slower simulations to see which of those keys could actually form that permanent superglue bond. It's a brilliant way to save a ton of computing power. And this image just beautifully illustrates that whole funnel in action. You start with this absolutely enormous library of potential drugs. And through this series of computational and then real-world experimental filters, you just narrow it down and narrow it down until you find that one golden needle in the haystack. And just think about the scale here for a second. The AI started its search by sifting through a virtual library of over 210,000 different compounds. A task like that would be practically impossible, or at least wildly expensive to do in a physical lab. So after all that heavy-duty computational screening, that massive number was whittled down to just the 50 most promising candidates. And that is a manageable number to actually buy and test in a real lab. And from those 50, one successful hit emerged, a completely new inhibitor, which they named AN988, that showed real promise against this cancer target. From over 200,000 possibilities all the way down to one. That is the power of this AI-driven process. So this is clearly a game changer. There's really no other way to put it. Let's look ahead a bit at the future of drug making and think about what this AI revolution is really going to mean for the future of medicine. But it's not a magic bullet, not yet anyway. One major concern researchers have is something called analog bias. This is basically where the AI gets really good at recognizing patterns in molecules it's already seen before, instead of truly learning the fundamental physics of why a drug works. You could almost say it's like it's memorizing the answers for a test instead of understanding the concepts. And there are some other hurdles too. For example, proteins in our bodies aren't static. They move, they flex, they breathe. But AI is often trained on these rigid 3D snapshots of them. The AI also struggles when there's very little data to learn from, which is, a common problem for rare diseases. But here's the exciting part. The field is moving at an absolutely incredible speed. Breakthroughs like Google DeepMind's AlphaFold 3 are a perfect example. This new tool can predict the complex 3D structures of how proteins interact with other molecules with just stunning accuracy. This isn't just a small improvement. It's a flood of the high-quality, dynamic data that's going to make these AI discovery models exponentially more powerful. And all of this leaves us with one final, really powerful thought. We've just seen how AI can find that one needle in a massive haystack. So the next great frontier is asking, how long until an AI can design that needle entirely from scratch? Based on the speed of progress we're seeing right now, the future of medicine might be a lot closer than any of us think.